So today, as I said, is all about perfect, the pursuit of perfect. And that's what we're thinking about now, and we're thinking about that again later this evening at 7:30 here in the building once again. Before we begin, a few quick practical things to mention. First of all, if you need the loo at any time, there are multiple toilets you can use. You can go through that door there, and you'll find one. You can go through the door in the back left, or my left, and there's an accessible toilet there. And if you go up the stairs, you'll also find some more toilets. Second thing to mention is the quiet room, which is also through that door. It's not the same as the toilets. Don't worry, it's up the stairs, and you'll find it in a little room. That's a space that you can go to if you just want a bit of time to yourself to reflect on things, or you just want a bit of space. Please make use of it. It is there for you guys to use. So as I mentioned, today is a pursuit of perfect. And the question we're asking is Cambridge. Is it all you thought it would be? And we're going to think through that question by having a short talk from our speaker at lunchtimes called Niv. He's with us throughout the week. And then we're going to have a Q&A afterwards where you can ask all the questions you've got from that talk. And then we're going to have time in the building where you can feel free to stay as long as you want to chat about the talk, keep this conversation going, and ask those questions for even longer if you want to. So I'm going to invite Niv to come up and join us. Thank you so much for joining us. He's going to get the mic, which hopefully won't fall down. That would be bad. Awesome.
I'm sorry, Sam. I feel like I'm pushing you.
It's all right. I'll go off stage. No, thank you for joining us for these lunchtimes. There are many people here who might not have been here for the past 2 lunches. Do you mind just introducing yourself so we know who you are?
Sure, it's wonderful to be here. My name is Niv. I'm ordained in the Church of England, so I'm like a church worker, work for a church in Southampton, and I'm also a chaplain at the university there, and it's such a privilege to be here engaging with questions like this.
Awesome. Now, there's a reason why talking about what Cambridge is like and if it's all it lived up to is maybe appropriate for you to talk about. Why might that be?
Well, I went here, actually, and there were moments when I did ask this question of myself and think, no, this is not what I signed up for. 10 years ago, I graduated and I'd studied English at Clare. So, yeah. Great.
Awesome. Final question. When you were a student here, things must have been pretty different. Being back, what's the biggest thing that has changed since when you were here?
Not that I've been here for long enough to notice all the differences, but I do think, and we'll talk about it in the talk, I think you guys are much more honest about how hard things can be. And I think when I was a student, there was almost a kind of heroism in pretending everything was fine and everything was easy and you were just nailing it.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam. Well, it's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for joining us, and do keep sticking your questions on the pigeonhole because we would love to have a discussion. And today's topic is one in which you might have all kinds of questions. I'm looking forward to them. The question is Cambridge all you thought it would be? Be honest. Is it? But if we're being honest, actually you could even feel maybe a little guilty about asking that question. Isn't Cambridge the holy grail for so many people? Think back to your offer holders Facebook group if you were in one. The awkwardness of the ones you never got to see. Isn't this what so many people have longed for? Isn't it a privilege? What do we mean asking a question like this? And sometimes it does feel like a privilege, doesn't it? Living in beautiful buildings, learning from, studying with brain-meltingly smart people, discovering all kinds of weird joys you never thought you would, like rowing and discovering that this, ostensibly form of torture is actually delightful, or loving your library, or making amazing music. So many things that are glorious. Well, that's how people on the outside think about Cambridge. It's often how alumni talk about it when they can look through the clouds of nostalgia. And it must be part of why we came here, surely. And maybe you're here and Cambridge is ticking all the boxes, and your answer is, yes, this is all I thought it would be and more. And if that's you, that is brilliant. I'm really glad to hear it. But if that's you, you must have noticed that you are not exactly part of a large crowd, that not everyone is feeling like that about Cambridge. That actually, everything others see about this amazing place can be a facade for much harder times. I've already mentioned my love of a TV show called BoJack Horseman, and in it one character says to another, when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Maybe that could be how we feel about Cambridge before we looked at it and now that we're here. All of these flags that turned out to be red flags. And a facade covering so much pain and emptiness. Mental health plummeting as term ticks towards week 8. This persistent sense of imposter syndrome and everyone else belongs but me. This horrible, unrelenting pressure to perform. All of that can be hidden by our time here. When I was a student, first week, my DOS, Jackie at Clare, had us all, fresh at England, sit down and talk. And she said, have a look around. Other students here at Cambridge are like swans. And you'll see them gliding serenely on the surface, calm, unruffled. But beneath the surface, their ugly legs are kicking like crazy. Remember that. And I often did have to remember that. It's one of the wisest things I was ever taught here. Certainly at the start of relationships with people, we didn't let each other see under the surface. Everyone did look like they were just sailing by. But of course, there are ways to glimpse beneath the surface, aren't there? Just go on CamFest. I saw this earlier, someone shared it with me. They'd written, I came to Cambridge so I could say I went to Cambridge. Why do I now have to do really hard work? Great question. That's at the more light-hearted end. But actually, it gets so much more real and dark on CamFest. And you see the dots, the content warning, and you see more. And it's really painful to see the anger, the desperation, the desolation in that experience. People who are anonymous and therefore feel they can be honest about how things really are. Honest about the fact that they're not just gliding by serenely. Honest about the fact it's a struggle. And I think that honesty can only be a good thing in the long term. Definitely a refreshing change from when I was a student here. What does all of this raise? It raises questions of value. Is being at Cambridge as valuable as you hoped it would be? What is the value of being here? Let alone that the thousands of pounds, literally, that this degree is going to cost you. What's the value of being here? The experiences, the relationships, the access. What's the value of it? But if we're honest, our searching value questions when it comes to Cambridge go back both ways, and they're often as much about us as they are about this university. Am I valuable at Cambridge? Will people value me here? Or is my value at stake? Does that persistent sense of imposter syndrome, does that crushing pressure to belong, does that fear of exclusion, perhaps if you come from a background that feels like a minority here, does all of that add up to me being less? Do I have to change myself to be valuable at Cambridge? And if I do, what's left behind? What do I lose? What fuels this kind of conversation? What fuels these anxieties? It's the idea that value is something that you achieve. You're at Cambridge. You achieved a place here. That is valuable, right? And the more you achieve, the more valuable that will be, right? And yet the problem is, so many of us would say that Cambridge has been disappointment as well as dream at times. Some of us might say it's been more disappointment than dream. Why is that? Now, achievement is not without its merits, actually. It probably would be better for achievement to be how people come to Cambridge rather than just say their wealth or their social status, though you may have questions about whether we can really disentangle all of those things. But when it comes to who we are, achievement is not enough to ground our value. But what would it mean to step off the treadmill of achievement and value and achievement and value? Wouldn't that mean being left behind? Wouldn't that mean doors closing to us in life? Few of us ever give ourselves permission to think of getting off the treadmill. But at the same time, few of us wonder if we can keep going. So where do we find our value? Let me read for you an encounter that a man who knows what we're talking about has with Jesus, and he comes to ask him a question. I don't know if it's on your tables as a little printout. I think it would be. And if you've got one of these to hand, it's on page 52. It's chapter 10 of Mark's Gospel, verse 17. As Jesus started on his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him. Good teacher,
He asked, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered, "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony, you shall not defraud, honor your father and mother." "Teacher," he declared, "all these I have kept since I was a boy." Jesus looked at him and loved him. "One thing you lack," he said. "Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." At this, the man's face fell. He went away sad because he had great wealth. This man, on first glance, looks like someone who has it sorted. He's rich. We see from other accounts of Jesus' life, he's young, and he's also a ruler, a community leader. Wealth, youth, influence. He has the world at his feet. And yet here he is at Jesus' feet. Because he's come to learn what every truly successful, truly accomplished person discovers in the end. Somehow it's not enough. Somehow something's missing. And Jesus agrees. "One thing you lack," he says. But what is it? What is that one thing? Is it a better life? Is it moral improvement? Well, no, this man would say. I've ticked all the boxes. I've done my best to keep the rules. I've been good. So why isn't it enough? Part of this man's tragedy is how helpless he is. Even when he gets the answer he needed from Jesus, he asked the question, Jesus told him what to do, he can't follow through. Why is he so helpless? We see part of the problem with trying to achieve your way to value is not just that it doesn't work, but it also warps your ability to understand what's truly valuable. And so money has become far too valuable for this man. It's taken on God-sized proportions in his life. The novelist David Foster Wallace once said this to a room full of students. If you've heard it before, I think you'll know it's worth hearing again. He said, "Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship," he wasn't a religious believer himself, by the way, "is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough, never feel you have enough. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. When time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally plant you. Worship power. You will feel weak and afraid, and you will need ever more power over others to keep the fear at bay. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart. You'll end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. Anything else will eat us alive." How many students at Cambridge are being eaten alive by the very thing they've chosen in coming here? And this man is being eaten alive. All his assets, all his achievements, none of it is delivering the thing he wanted. And that's because real value is not something you can achieve. Just think about it. Say your dream comes true. Wherever it is you want to go, say you got there. You excel, you come top of your year, you get that elusive, exclusive job, you get the relationship you've been pining for. Say you get there. What would happen then? Would you be fulfilled? The thing is, people who do get there tell us they aren't. They get the goal, but then the goalposts seem to have moved. And they find themselves having to do more to top the thing they already did. They find themselves somehow as if it isn't enough. And that's if you get your dream. What about if you don't? You miss out. You know what the goal is, but you don't get there. And from that point on, you're haunted by a sense of what could have been, but never will be. And even the best things are always shadowed by a sense of disappointment that somehow you weren't enough. Try to achieve your value, and it can't fulfill you when you win, and it won't forgive you when you lose. And that's just how it works out for you. What kind of society do we become? What kind of community do we become when achievement is how we find our value? You don't even need to tell you, surely. We become brutally competitive and left teetering between pride and despair. Pride as we look down on those who didn't do as well as we did. Pride that empties us of empathy for whatever issues they might have. Or despair as we look up at those who've done better, were more capable, or had an unfair head start that we never did. And that becomes a toxic place to be. We can't achieve our way to value. It won't fulfill you when you win. It can't forgive you when you lose. So how do we find it? We see this man that we just met walks away from Jesus because he doesn't understand what Jesus was really asking. The man's afraid that he's going to miss out. But Jesus is not saying, give all your money away because I'm petty and I want to make you poorer. He says, go, sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. He's saying, listen to me and you will make others rich. Be truly rich yourself with treasure in heaven, and you'll have me. Jesus is saying, give it all away and you won't really lose a thing because you'll have me. And when you have me and nothing else, you will find a value and a dignity that no amount of money could ever buy. Come, follow me. And you might think to yourself, okay, well, now I know that Christians are crazy. Who would say yes to Jesus and give everything away so that they could have him? But actually, Jesus is asking us two questions when he calls us to follow him. One, what if there were more to you than what you've acquired, than what you've achieved, than what you're admired for? More to you than your Cambridge stats? What if your status, relationship, all of it? What if the reason why it will never really satisfy is that you were made for much more? And secondly, what if God were more than your examiner, more than your employer, more than just some judge? What if value isn't something you have to earn before he'd look at you, but something he longs to give you? What if that were true? See, the value that we're longing for, the kind that just being at Cambridge doesn't automatically deliver, cannot be achieved. It can only be received. And I think we get that in other areas of life. We realize that achievement and value aren't a sort of one-to-one correlation. Just imagine that you and I are watching the Paralympics together. It's a great thing to do. We're enjoying it. But then I turn to you and say, what's the point? In the Olympics, some of the running times are far faster. Athletes are able to do more. I think you'd be right to say to me, Niv, you are missing the point. There is something of value here that mere run times cannot capture. Understand what's going on. And you'd be right to say that to me. Because value doesn't work in that sense of strict achievement. There is more going on than comparing run times will really capture. And that's very good news because it means that your value can flow from who you are rather than what you do. And because the Bible says that you are made in God's image, that means that your value is incalculable. But things have gone wrong. Instead of living in the value that God gives us, we've found ways of turning it in on ourselves, living on our own terms, finding value on our own terms. And where we're left is asking questions like this: never fulfilled when we succeed, never forgiven when we fail, and trapped in a brutally competitive environment. Cut off from the value giver himself, we're left radically insecure. But the good news is, he doesn't want to leave us like that. You could never do enough to be enough. You could never have enough to be enough. But God wants to give it to you. And what you could never achieve is something he wants you to receive. Just before this influential man comes to Jesus, actually little children were being brought to Jesus. And his disciples, the Christians, tried to stop them. Why bring these little children to Jesus? What do they have to offer? And Jesus actually tells them off. It might be on the previous page if you're here, and I think it might be on your printout, but it's verse 14. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant. He said to them, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it." See, this rich man is a big deal, but he doesn't get it. These little children are not a big deal. They're very small, small enough to fit in Jesus' arms. And the kingdom belongs to them. And they become an example to us. Now, Jesus is not saying, little children, they're so much more moral than we are. If you've ever spent time with a little child, you will know that they are not. And the thing is, little children aren't even unselfish. But what they are also not is self-reliant. Little children are such a good example because they depend entirely on others for everything. They offer nothing but their needs. My favourite things is when my 1.5-year-old daughter comes up to me and she sticks her hands in the air and goes, "Up, please." And I have to get down and pick her up, and I do it every time. Children offer nothing but their needs, and their needs get met. And Jesus says, why not be a bit like them? What would it look like for you to come to Jesus and offer nothing but your needs? Can I say it probably wouldn't involve giving away all of your riches. Jesus doesn't actually say that that's something all of his followers have to do, just this one. But it probably would involve leaving some things behind so that you could trust Jesus. And if, as you listen to me, you're thinking and you know exactly what that would be, and you worry if it would not be worth it to let go, let me ask this question. Where do you think it all comes from? If you're here and you're having an amazing experience, and if you're here and you've enjoyed your friendships, they've enriched you, and there are things you delight in, where do you think they come from? They're all gifts, and they come from an even better giver. And so one of the things a writer I love says is, you can trace the sunbeam back up to the sun. You can move from the gift to the giver, and that's what Jesus is inviting us to do. Not to let go of these other things so that we don't have them, but so that we can truly have them by having the one who is the giver, and so enjoying the gift that he has to give. And when you have Jesus, then you have the one who really does know how to forgive and really does know how to fulfill. What happens with Jesus when you fall short? He doesn't make you degrade. He doesn't hold you at arm's length, and he doesn't put you down. He forgives you. And in fact, he did that in the most costly way, choosing to take on himself the consequences of our rejection of God, and even face that rejection in his death. And when you have Jesus, you have the one who really can fulfill, because he is the ultimate value giver, opening his arms to embrace you, restoring you to the relationship you were made for, because to him, you are to die for, literally to die for. That is what is on offer from him. The value that just being at Cambridge wouldn't bring can be received. And I think we know how much we need that. You're at Cambridge, so you know that voice in your head that says, work harder, prove you belong. That when you get it wrong says, work harder to make up for it. That when you've done everything and you're exhausted says, keep working, because how could you ever know if you've done enough? Come meet Jesus and you'll discover that is not his voice. He offers a love like nothing else, which would change your life. I always find it a bit weird to know how to talk about a French author and a French title, so bear with me as I do this, because it feels like I'm going to do a weird... Anyway. Les Miserables. Let's try it. Les Miserables. I don't know. This is the thing, because I'm going to say Victor Hugo. Should I be saying Victor Hugo? Anyway, he once said in Les Miserables, I'll say the English translation, the ultimate happiness in life is the conviction that one is loved, loved for oneself, better still, loved in spite of oneself. And that is exactly the love that is on offer from Jesus. A love that you do not have to perform for. A love that knows all your faults and still loves you. A love that means that you don't have to keep impressing him. You don't have to earn your way with him because he's paid for it all. That's the love that can help us deal with the pressure and the anxiety and the worry. That's the love that can ground us. Now, I want to say that's not automatic. It takes a lifetime sometimes to unwrap the fullness of what Jesus is offering. And so pressure, anxiety, worry, fear, these are still features of Christians' experiences once they start following Jesus. But we don't face them alone anymore. And they don't get the last word. Today, Jesus is inviting you to stop playing the game that you can never win and discover in stealth the value that only he can bring, that cannot be achieved, but can be received. And I love engaging with your questions. I love it when we have the Q&A time. Please ask them. But can I tell you, this is not just a cerebral exercise we're talking about today. This is a love that you can experience for yourself. And you wouldn't have to leave this building before you took Jesus up on it. So if that's something you want to do, stay around, have a coffee, talk to someone you came with or to me, because we would love for you to discover it. But thank you so much for listening. Why not chat in your groups a minute, put on more questions on the Pigeonhole, and we'll have some Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for all your questions. I'm very sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt your amazing conversations. We are going to have our Q&A. Please do keep sending in questions if you want. And remember, you can upvote them if there's one that you really like, if you can't think of one yourself. But yeah, we're going to get started with our first question, Liv. Why can't we just find value from within ourselves?
Yeah, great question. Earlier today, I'm staying in someone's house, and it's quite funny. I'm in a kind of like teenage girl's bedroom. The teenage girl's gone away, and it's just covered in like Doctor Who posters. But one of the fun things on the desk, there's like a gift of a sunflower like seed kit, and it says everything you need is inside. And I just thought to myself, that is kind of what a lot of us are told a lot of the time. You know, the great church of Disney, which has indoctrinated us into believing that actually everything we need is inside. And were we just to summon it up from within, look what we discover. And it is true that sometimes you can, through some kind of Nietzschean triumph, draw from within yourself this remarkable power to dominate and exert your will over circumstances. Although people like that are rarely very fun to be around, aren't they? The issue with that, why can't we just come up with value from within, is that value is a relative concept. Value only exists when people find things valuable. I understand that's what, stocks and NFTs are all about. Is what do people find valuable? Well, that's the thing that they value. And so if you say to yourself, don't worry, all the value is going to come from within, it's all about me and how I value myself, you will probably be left feeling very hollow when it turns out that not everyone agrees with your self-evaluation. And so we were made for that interchange of being valued by others and valuing them too. And the reason for that is that we were made by a God who is the ultimate value giver, the one in whose eyes your preciousness really can be found. And so unless you have that outside you, outside your community sense of value, you are going to struggle in life. And the value you conjure up for yourself will feel hollow when you most need it to feel solid. And that's the point. That actually you may drift from Nietzschean triumph to Nietzschean triumph like some kind of Ubermensch, but most of us aren't like that. Most of us have moments of acute self-doubt, self-loathing, and worry, and in those moments, pretending that the value you've made up for yourself is enough isn't. And that's just me being real. So it's not just that the Christian faith is true. It's not just that it makes sense of all the big picture things. It's also that in those moments, it really does make a difference like nothing else.
Thank you. Could what you've said be true of any religion?
A really fun question. And do you know what? I am such a novice when it comes to other religions and their teachings. I'm always doing my best to read and learn and understand more. And so if in what I'm about to say, you want to come up and say later, Niv, you were wrong. You do not understand the Bhagavad Gita. Your knowledge of the Quran is subpar. I'm sure you're right. So let me just preface what I'm about to say with that. But I do think it's fair to say that there is a qualitative difference between what Jesus offers and basically how most other religions seem to function. And the area of difference is in the concept that Christians call grace. The sense that your acceptance with God and your belonging with Him actually isn't something you achieve. It isn't something you have to perform for. It isn't something you gain and keep in the rules that you keep. It's something given for free. It's something you just get to receive. And that is a huge difference. I sometimes say when I'm giving talks like this that it's the difference between please and thank you. That it's fair to say that in most of life, and actually I think it's fair to say in lots of other religious traditions, we are offering our lives up to the judgment of God or whatever. And it really does depend on whether we get it right or not. We're saying, please, is this enough? The difference is that with Jesus, you say thank you. When he died, one of the accounts of Jesus' life says, John's Gospel, he said, it is finished, fully paid for. Nothing more needs to be achieved by you. It's yours. There is no other voice saying that. I also want to say that there is also no other religious figure or frontman who is making the claim to be God in person come to you. It's a moment where that man says, good teacher, and Jesus says, why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. And at first glance, you're like, is Jesus saying he's not God? Actually, what he's saying is, I'm God or I'm not good. Don't get me wrong. Don't say I'm just a good teacher. And that's not a claim any other prophet, any other religious figure actually makes. Worth taking seriously. So please do investigate it. Thank you.
What's the difference between valuing something and placing your value in something?
That's a very searching question. I think they're connected. And I think that's what this rich man's experience shows, that actually his valuing of money had somehow meant that his value was tied to money. And so there's a sense in which the thing he valued was not able to stay outside of him. Just in the process of valuing it, it changed him. So what I was trying to say about how achievement warps our ability to understand value. This is something that the mythology and folklore of the world talks about. You know, you do get myths about dragons. And how do they start? They don't start as like lizards. They start as greedy hoarders. Do you know a story like that from your culture? The stories like that from sort of Norse Viking places. They start with that greedy, dragonish tendency, and then they become the thing they've worshipped. That hoarding instinct. Well, I think that's a pretty sensible intuition. That actually, in the end, there isn't a huge amount of difference between what you value and what you put your value in. Just think about it. Would it be possible to say, I value money and nothing else, but I put my own value in something else? That's not going to last for long, is it? One of those is going to have to go.
How did your faith change the way you saw your value when you were here? What did you do when you felt you started deriving value from your achievements again?
Yeah, great question. So I was a choral scholar at Clare, and Clare's very good. Its choir's very good. And I was not able to be as good as I wanted to be. And looking back on it, I wish I could say, Niv, you're 18. You're barely into puberty, let alone through it. Your body has to do a lot of changing, and actually in singing that kind of matters. Your physiology is quite a big part of that. But I just felt like a relentless failure, and I really struggled with that. Academically, you know, Cambridge is like that. Okay, you're smart compared to other people in your school, then you go to Cambridge. Oh, you're smart compared to some of these people, but are you smarter than Milton and Shakespeare and Newton and everyone else who's been here? No. You know, and so no matter how high you were riding, down you come. I think to me, following Jesus was huge because it actually freed me from even thinking about myself and my position vis-a-vis other people. And this amazing reality that actually I could, without being less precious, because God valued me, kind of step back from the spotlight. It didn't have to be all about me. It could be about Jesus, and it could be about others and loving them. And because of that, I found myself less tormented by questions of my place in everything, less like I had to look down on those who hadn't done as well, or desire to supplant or topple those who were above me. And that's pretty amazing, actually. That's the thing that might change Cambridge if the message of Jesus got into people's hearts. Imagine if you didn't have to be threatened by those who were better than you or smarter than you, because God didn't love them more for what they've achieved, or you less for what you haven't. That would change everything. It was big for me, and I think discovering the sense that I no longer had to live for myself, that it didn't matter, but not because nothing mattered, but because everything mattered, just in a different way, and value was there, just not for me to achieve, for me to receive. Have I said that enough?
What if the problem is not doing enough work or procrastinating?
Yeah, laziness is definitely a thing, isn't it? And I think it is funny, when people come to Cambridge, it's interesting how you respond in different ways to the sense of being like, oh my goodness, I'm no longer the smartest person. Some people double down, work hard, oh my goodness, never rest, never shower. Other people are like, okay, I can't win at this, so I'm going to step back, and I'm going to hit the ADC or the river or something else, or I'm not even going to pursue excellence there, I'm just going to step back from the whole thing, and I'm going to be this kind of like enlightened Cambridge stoner type, and so I think what's interesting is that procrastination too is often fueled by some of these things. Laziness too is fueled by one of those things, and the solution is not to just work harder. That might be a shortcut if you beat yourself into working harder at exam term, it usually is during exam term. But the truth is something better is needed. Firmer ground beneath our feet is needed. A better attitude to work. Because it's possible for work to dominate you just as much when you're not doing it than when you are. And I think you might know people like that. People who are always talking about how much they're not working. And you just think, oh, interesting how much that matters. So I think, that can be a problem. And I think here at the CU, we'd want to say the answer is not just rolling up your sleeves and working even harder. It's actually finding a bigger picture from which to view your life, in which work means something. Not everything, but something.
We'll see if there's a final question, how long it takes to answer. Isn't it just a case of finding out what gives each person value on an individual basis? Since we're all unique, different things give me value than other people, what makes Jesus different?
Thank you so much. Let's take apart a few of those things. Are we all unique? I want to believe that, and the Bible gives me good reason to believe that. Someone once said that when we freeze water, it's ice cubes, all in the mold. When he does it, when God freezes water, it's snowflakes, each one literally unique. So yes, I want to believe that. But talk to the people who run social media, talk to the people who are devising algorithms. Are we unique? They might not think so. They seem to have found lots of products that are covering lots of bases. So that's a question that's up in the air. And if you really do believe you're unique and that everyone in this room is unique, then, yeah, I think you do need Jesus to give you that sense of uniqueness and worth. But then the question is, okay, well, if we're all unique, surely we just find our value in different things. And there is some truth in that. There's a sense in which, if I am to show my wife my appreciation of her, there are ways I can do that that would entirely leave her cold, and other ways I could do that that would make her day. We're all like that. There are different things that make us feel valuable in our lives, in our relationships, of course, because we are unique. The real question is, what's underneath that? And I think what I want to say is, if underneath that evaluation of the different ways we feel loved and valued and cherished is the ultimate belonging of love in God, then that means that all of our different ways of feeling valued are validated. And that's important. So the fact that all of us might feel valued in different ways and might pursue value in slightly different things, that's not a problem. I was an English student who loved my literature. I loved it, and I just enjoyed it so much, and the value I put into it and the value I got out of it, and that wasn't evil or wrong. It would only have been a problem if I was putting that at the very top of everything, supplanting the God who made me. Put it all in order, and of course you can find these things valuable. Like the solar system. Jupiter's huge, makes Earth look tiny, couldn't be at the center of the solar system. You kind of need something sun-sized for that. English student, what do I know? But you know what I mean? So get the biggest thing at the center, and everything else will orbit harmoniously.
Thank you so much for that. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there so people can get away to lectures if they need to. Thank you, Niv, for being with here and giving talk and Q&A. We don't want this to be the end of a conversation. We'd love it if you guys were able to keep asking your questions. Sorry if they weren't asked in the Q&A.
Please talk to me. I'll be here. And so if your question wasn't asked or you didn't get to ask it on the thing, come. I want to talk about it. I want to hear it. It'll be great.
Yes, do talk to Niv. We've got a few things that we can say. Hopefully some slides might appear. Oh, there we go. So first of all, we've got a bookstall, totally free. Go have a look, pick up a book, read it. Please do that. There's so many out there, great books. Next thing is the feedback forms. You can tell us how we've done, if we can do anything better. If you want to get in touch with us, that's a great way of doing that. Once you filled it out, they're like the orange things. You can grab a pen, do that, drop them in a box at the back, and then we'll look through them. And then the final, penultimate thing, the cafe, Pursuit Cafe, that's going to be happening right after this event. So why not grab a book, fill out a feedback form, get a coffee, sit down, have a nice read. It's basically Waterstones, but free. So I would do that. There's also, I've been informed, going to be donuts and biscuits. So do grab one. If you're not going to stick around, grab one of those at least. But also use the space to chat, just to keep those conversations going. It'll be open for a while, so feel free to stick around. Final thing, tonight we are back here once again for another event on pursuing perfect. It will be on mistakes and mistreatment. How can we forgive? Huge topic. Be great to see you back here again at 7:30, I believe. Doors open at 7. And if you weren't able to be here and you're not going to be there tonight, and you're watching online, thank you so much for joining us. Do watch the live stream again this evening. There will be a Zoom afterwards that you can join where you can talk to some people, keep the questions coming, have some conversations. You're so welcome to do that. Thank you again for coming. It's been awesome to see you all. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and hopefully see you again this evening. Thank you again, Niv, as well.